Community. You are listening to Lone Star 4.5 KC and 106. LP Conroe and .com.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Legal Connection with Toni and Cheryl. Toni and I are two Texas licensed attorneys, and we're here as a public service to help you, our listeners, in your questions and your situations, your legal situations. You can reach out to us and we will try, if there's a topic that you want to talk about, we will try and discuss that. And today we're so excited because we have a special guest. Our special guest is Sargent Brice Herring, and he is a sergeant with the Montgomery County Sheriffs Office. And welcome to the show, Sargent Herring.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sargent Herring is with us today, and we're going to talk about just a variety of legal topics. We're going to talk about, how to handle interactions with law enforcement and common things, like just traffic stops, something common.
Right.
And then Sargent Herring he's going to be with us for 2 shows. Yay. Right. And we're going to talk about concealed carry and what that, how you interact with law enforcement if you have a concealed carry license and in different kinds of situations. And he's also going to be talking to us about the new Sandra Bland Act. And that is interaction with law enforcement with teens when they're driving.
Very important, since that's been in the news in the last year, and a lot of our, I guess that's the Waller case, right? I think it wasn't Sandra Bland and Waller.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So a lot of my clients were very curious about that situation, and plus we're going to go over situations about guns. I know that that's a big and scary thing that's going on between the public and law enforcement, and so we're going to discuss, how you handle it, what you should do, what you shouldn't do,
right?
Because that's been sort of in the media quite a bit, but really because Second Amendment rights are so big here in Montgomery County and in Texas, we need to find out, really the how to and what to do so that everybody's safe and does the right thing.
Right. Yeah, Sargent Herring and I were talking about with the information. We have so much information on YouTube and Facebook, and people say, well, if you get pulled over, do this and say this to the cop and demand your rights and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the information is bad. And so we just really appreciate you being here, Sargent Herring, and as a public service to, help educate our listeners about what is appropriate and what is not, and don't, get yourself into a situation where you think you're doing the right thing and you're actually doing something completely wrong in interacting with law enforcement. So, Sargent Herring, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you have been in law enforcement for 29 years.
28. I started my law enforcement career up in the Panhandle, and then moved down here and started with Montgomery County Sheriffs Office April 7th of 1998.
Wow.
And what part of the Panhandle?
I worked up in Dumas and in Canyon, and also with
what counties
Amarillo.
are those?
Randall.
Okay.
Randall, Potter, and Moore counties.
Oh, okay, because I had done some work up in Armstrong, and the Panhandle is just one big area up there. But okay, so but what brought you to the Montgomery County area?
Yeah.
Well, my parents moved here from El Paso in 96.
Okay.
And I moved here in 98 to help assist care for them.
Oh, okay. And I'm sure it's been wonderful ever since, and that's why you stayed, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, well, we're glad to have you here. Okay, Sargent, so let's just go through some basic things. Let's talk about some interaction with law enforcement for our listeners, and something as common as a traffic stop. You and I were talking about how that's probably the most common interaction with a traffic stop. So you see somebody blow by you. How does that? What happens?
The most common interaction with law enforcement is traffic. We get from point A to point B in a motor vehicle, and people make mistakes, and they go too fast. They run a red light. They don't quite stop at a stop sign. They have registration violations. You name it. There's a whole myriad of different violations that can happen. It is the most common interaction with law enforcement that the general public will have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And in doing so, there are several things that people need to understand. Number one, it's just a traffic violation.
So don't get freaked out. You mean don't get scared?
And some people, this is the only interaction that they'll ever have with law enforcement.
Yeah.
My wife has been driving for years and has only had one time she's ever been stopped. Once.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great.
I can't say that's true for other family members or even myself.
Maybe my daughter needs to take some lessons from your wife.
But the only interaction that she has with police officers, if it wasn't for myself or even my son who's a police officer, is that one interaction.
Right.
And depending on how they perceive that action or that contact or that interaction is how they will perceive law enforcement in general.
That's so true.
So every police officer out there doesn't want a bad traffic contact. They want everything to go smoothly no matter what the seriousness of the offense is. They don't want things to turn violent. They don't want things to turn ugly, nasty with anybody.
Yeah.
We're just like anybody else, any other human being. We like things to go very well.
Right.
What people need to understand is that there is a responsibility that we have to do. We make a decision or determination when we stop a vehicle, whether or not, number one, the seriousness of the offense, whether it's running a stop sign, speeding, if it's 10 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, whether or not that individual is receiving a citation, and how that proceeds or goes from that point. And a lot of it has to do sometimes with the attitude of the violator. Not that we write tickets for attitudes, but we...
You have a bad attitude.
I'll bet that happens quite a bit, though, right?
Sometimes, not as much as you think.
Really?
Yeah.
It all depends.
I've had bad attitudes with cops, and they just fought with me and didn't even write me a ticket. So it just kind of depends.
We really try to make a determination whether or not we're going to issue a citation to a violator prior to making physical contact with that individual. So we try to take that element of attitude out of it.
Yeah.
Okay? Everybody's human.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you a couple questions real quick that just came to mind. When you stop somebody, regardless of where it is, and I guess there's going to be a difference between whether on I-45 or in a subdivision, and this I just don't even know, but you are. What is the procedure for asking them to step out of the car? I've never been asked to step out of my car when I've been stopped, but
yeah, me neither.
I see it quite a bit with my clients, and I see it on the road. So when do you ask somebody to step out of their car?
Well, it depends on the circumstance. There are some agencies that is their policy to have individuals step out of the car and step to the rear, or not in between the two vehicles, but to the side.
Mm-hmm.
Montgomery County Sheriff's Office policy is we don't have a policy whether or not we ask them to step out or not to. It depends on the individual officer.
Discretionary.
Okay.
And depends on the circumstance.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If I need to speak to that driver away from the occupants of that car, then I'll do so. One of the common things when I used to work nights and doing DWI enforcement, if you had a designated driver and you had a car full of drunks,
Right.
then the inside of the car smells like a whole bunch of drunks.
Right.
So you have to separate the driver
Yes.
To
from
see
the
if
smell
they're
of the
emitting.
alcohol.
Right.
That's wise. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives them the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
keeps them away from an intoxicated individual's interaction with law enforcement, which sometimes can and cannot go well.
Now, what if
Right.
the designated driver requests that they step away? Would that alert you, or would you let them do that, or how would that work? I mean, I ask that because I'm always the designated driver because I don't drink. And so if I said, can I step out, would that be like an alert you to something, or would you be amenable to that, or how would that work?
No, and it all depends on how that question is posed in the circumstances, of totality of the circumstances that are involving the traffic stop.
Okay.
When I was a young man, my father taught me any interaction with law enforcement, when you're stopped by a police officer, get out of the vehicle, walk back, and shake the officer's hand. That's no longer an accepted practice.
Okay.
We prefer that people stay in their motor vehicle. Now, that's what my father taught me. He taught my brother the same thing, and that's what my father...
Was your father an officer?
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
But we had a lot of interaction with law enforcement because of where we lived and what my father did.
Okay, it was El Paso, correct?
ma'am.
Okay.
So those were the old days.
Right.
Times have changed. We want people to stay into the motor vehicle,
Okay.
keep their hands where they can be seen, and just be pleasant. If you have a question of why you were stopped, there's a way to ask it rather than yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
Now, what about recording? We've seen that on the TV quite a bit. If somebody gets their phone and starts recording, does that alert you? Do you not like it? Is it okay? And what do you feel about that?
Yeah.
We're recording anyway.
That makes
Right.
sense. Because I've seen on the news, like national news, where somebody starts recording and the officers seem to be very tentative about that, or they don't like it. Okay.
We have video cameras. We've had video cameras in our motor vehicles or in our patrol cars for years. We do have limited use of body cameras.
And I've seen a lot of body cams lately in the cases I've been working on. It seems like any interview has got a body cam on it in Harris County. Is that something they do in Montgomery County at all?
There are agencies that do a lot of work with body cameras. We do a limited.
So it's not every
Exposure.
sheriff, a deputy sheriff doesn't have a body cam. Okay.
No, but every patrol vehicle, every marked patrol vehicle has got a video camera in it, and they have a body mic which
Okay.
records audio.
Okay.
Right.
So they're being recorded anyway.
Okay.
It doesn't make, to me and to most officers, it doesn't make any difference if somebody pulls out a phone and starts recording.
Unless you think it's a gun, maybe. I would think that would be kind of
Well-
a scary thing.
People need to understand on how to do things.
Right.
You know, they don't want to walk up on the officer in the middle of the night and come up from
Camera.
behind him and stick something in his face.
Yes.
You know, be respectful when you're letting them know what you're doing,
Okay.
and don't interfere with whatever investigation. Give them space to operate.
Okay.
Well, what would interference with an investigation look like?
Like sticking a phone in their face would probably be one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if an officer is conducting an interview, interfering with that interview with either a victim or a suspect or a witness, give them a little bit of space to conduct their business.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that says that you can't stand from a safe distance, in other words, across the street or far enough away where you're not interfering with the investigation or whatever the interaction is, and watch. There's
Right.
nothing that says that.
Now, that brings to mind, I see this all the time. And as a criminal defense attorney, I see DWIs and the field sobriety test all the time at gas stations. And my instinct as an attorney is to be, don't do the field sobriety test. But I never say that. It's just my instinct because that's what you tell your clients. Have you ever had that happen where somebody's doing a field sobriety test and somebody tries to intervene or yell from another car or not even just DWIs, but any time that you're investigating or you've been called out to arrest, where somebody has tried to talk from a distance to the person that you're interviewing?
Yes.
And what do you do?
It depends on their interaction. And it depends on, again, the totality of the circumstances on what type of an interview it is.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it may be nothing more than asking somebody who, what, where, why these events occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And they're there voluntarily and they want to help.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just the opposite. Sometimes it's the suspect and you've already advised them of their rights or whatever the case may be, and
Okay.
somebody yells at them, whatever they yell,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the time they don't pay attention to them unless they
Oh.
get right up on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
But I'm
they're-
saying, like, to you, if you're interviewing somebody, particularly I'm thinking of traffic stops where somebody's doing the field sobriety and you're watching them, and I can see where another person that might be drunk at a bar might say, "You're doing that wrong" or something. What do you do about that?
well, if another person is drunk in a bar and we're in a parking lot and they're in the parking lot,
They're
they're in
pretty
violation
dumb,
of state
yeah.
law being drunk in
Oh.
public.
Okay, that's
So
true.
we have ways of dealing
Okay,
with that.
okay,
We
got
put
it.
them in a nice little room with friends that are probably as intoxicated as they are, so that they can enjoy
Okay.
the rest of their night.
Okay, you hear that, all of you potential people that are trying to help your friends that are coming out of the bar and aren't using your common sense. Stay in the bar.
That's right. And keep quiet.
Alcohol is by far the most common issue that we have, especially at night, and especially when you're dealing with disturbances or DWIs, people that get alcohol into their system.
Mm-hmm.
They immediately lose their ability to make
There's no
good
gate,
judgment
right.
calls.
That's right. Well, we're going to take a break. You guys, y'all check us out. Our website is www.legalconnectionshow.com. And you can call us with your questions, 281-529-5862. We're here with Sargent Brice Herring, and we'll be right back after the break.
Hey guys, this is Connor,
This is Dick.
This is Chris.
and we're with the Ticket Stub Podcast every Thursday live at noon on 104.5 and 106.1 FM in the Conroe area. Also, anytime at irlonestar.com. You go to irlonestar.com/TTS. You can find all of our social media.
And don't forget, we give away 2 tickets to the Grand Theater on every show.
If you like movies and you like complaining or celebrating anything that has to do with the silver screen, check out the Ticket Stub Podcast and join us every Thursday at noon o'clock on Lone Star Community Radio.
Welcome back to the Legal Connection with Toni and Cheryl. Today, we have a special guest, and we're going to have him next week, too. Sargent Brice Herring with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. Toni and I are just thrilled that he's here. We've been talking about traffic stops, interaction with law enforcement. And, Toni, you said you had another question for the sergeant
Just
about...
a few follow-ups, and because you mentioned your son was also in law enforcement. Was he following your footsteps? Is he in Montgomery County? I mean, tell us a little bit about your son.
My son is actually a police officer in Duncanville, Texas,
Oh,
outside of
okay.
Dallas.
Yeah.
He just returned from one overseas tour. He's a sergeant in the Texas Army National Guard.
Oh, wow.
So he just got back probably 8 days ago.
Aren't you proud?
I am. He's a very, very caring and just a
And he
great young
followed
man.
your footsteps into
That's
law enforcement,
awesome.
and that's so. That the service to your country is amazing, as we know how difficult that is, and the
Well,
bravery and all.
He's done a fantastic job. My wife works for the sheriff's office also in
Wow.
corrections. So
Wow, is that here in Montgomery
Correction?
County?
yes, ma'am.
Oh, wow. So, which is another question I have. I understand that they're building another jail in Montgomery County. No, or this is.
Ma'am, that's above my pay grade. I
Okay.
have no idea.
And that could be completely wrong, because people tell me stuff all the time and they're like, you need to go find out where they're building the new jail. I'm like, what? You're kidding. They're building a new jail? I haven't seen anything. Okay, my next question is notices. You mentioned a little bit before, sometimes you get notices, and then Cheryl mentioned that sometimes she gets an attitude and only gets a notice. When is there some, what's the distinct, can you talk your way out of a ticket, and when do you only give notices? And tell us a little bit about that sort of discretion.
Notices, you mean citations?
Yes,
or
not
warnings.
actually getting a ticket.
Warnings.
Warnings, right.
Okay. Usually, if my mind is made up whether or not you're going to receive a citation, that's pretty much set in stone.
Right.
There are circumstances, and always circumstances, in which you believe that you're going to be issuing a citation to this individual, and you find out something different. There may be a medical emergency.
Right.
There may be other circumstances, like things I like to call like life.
Mm-hmm.
Life gets in the way sometimes, and when those things happen, sometimes we need, being police officers, a little bit of compassion. The goal of a traffic stop is to get individuals to comply with traffic laws for the safety of the general public.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's our entire goal.
Right.
Now, there are other things that happen because of traffic stops. We have bad guys that use cars to go from point A to point B. They do crimes in motor vehicles. So traffic is part of a way of getting them stopped. I mean, it's just part of the way it happens. But in general, we want the motoring public to do the right thing on the road. We want them to obey the speed limit. It's set there for a reason.
I would say also that I know when I've gotten a ticket, I tend to be a much better driver after that. So it's not just
Or when we see a police officer driving down the road, we tighten it up a little bit. I mean, even officers do that.
I have to ask you this: when you're
true.
driving down the road, and I'm assuming, do you do patrol or did you do patrol in the past?
I've been on for all of about a year and 6 months. I've been in patrol. I'm still in patrol now.
So what happens when is this a common occurrence that you see brake lights quite a bit? People are zooming down the road, and then you see the brake lights hit.
Oh yeah, you know there's
do you
a
go
cop.
after them, or is that a signal to what? How does that affect your thought process and perhaps maybe going after them if you suddenly see a brake lights after somebody just passes by you?
Well, normally I don't see that when I'm in a marked patrol car because everybody behaves themselves when I'm driving around in my sheriff's office issued vehicle. When I'm in my personal vehicle and I see people driving like nuts and I see brake lights coming on, you just hope that they get caught and get stopped.
Right.
And do you have any control over that when you're not in your marked vehicle? Have you ever done a citizen's arrest type thing? I do know some officers that have done that, and my clients get crazy. They're like, they weren't even in a real car. They were marked a police car. They were off duty, and I've had off-duty police officers arrest my clients for traffic stops, which is crazy.
Well, it depends on we do have arrest powers off duty.
Right.
You know, it all depends, again, on the circumstances in which it happens. I have made phone calls and followed DWI drivers when I was off duty in my personal vehicle.
Which is completely appropriate, I think. If somebody's driving, that injures somebody. If every citizen should do that if they see somebody driving like bad. I've had that a lot where I've had my clients videoed by, my DWI clients videoed by somebody behind them, and that's it. I mean, they've got a video of them driving crazy.
It's during DWI trials, you have the officer's testimony, and sometimes you have officer video of how they're driving.
Right.
But it's always better to have a citizen's video.
Yes.
Somebody that is not law enforcement, trained to recognize DWIs, to go, look how drunk this person was.
Right.
while
And
they're
I
driving
had a
them.
case just like that in
Right.
Waller where my guy he was clean. He was speaking coherently with the officers. And I'm like, they just don't even have a case here. And then this last piece of evidence came in right before we were like set to go to trial. And I'm like, I gasped. I'm like, oh my gosh.
And it
You're
was a
lucky to be
citizen's
alive
video?
because a citizen's video came in and we didn't know it. And we ended up settling that case. I would never have known though.
Well, DWI is the understanding of alcohol intoxication. Every officer that's out there on the street has been trained in standardized field sobriety testing. I'm an SFST instructor. Being that, there are specific things that we look for that the general public most of the time would not even consider an individual that is intoxicated. Because the very first thing that is affected by alcohol is judgment. So
Right.
you go faster normally when you would have stopped for that long yellow light. Now you go through it. Now you're going a little bit faster than you normally would. And, on the funny side, that's why all these gals that don't look so good in a bar get a lot better looking at closing time because of
Especially the
alcohol.
judgment.
So true. Okay, and that kind of leads me to my next question. There's a myth, or maybe it's not a myth, that there might be quotas. Is there any? Tell us about that. Is that true or not true? Where officers have to get to a certain point, so many tickets
By the end
so
of the
many arrests
month
or
or
something by a
whatever.
certain period of time up to earn their stripes or anything? Because
Nope.
I don't know. There's none.
not. They let us
Okay.
ride as many as we want.
Okay.
And seriously, there's not. We do have. We want officers to go out there and be productive.
Right.
We want them to go out there and do their job. We don't want them sitting in a parking lot watching YouTube on their phone for hours when we have issues in school zones or issues of speeding out in certain neighborhoods. We want them to go out there and take care of those issues. But we don't sit there and say, you need to write 10 citations, 10 tickets, and give 15 warnings. We prefer that you go out there and make as many traffic stops, contacts, as you want.
Is there like any awards or anything if they get a bunch? I mean, I'm just wondering, do you have more zealous or I've never met a lazy police officer. I'll tell you that. Law enforcement, I've never met any that don't really love their job because they went through a lot of work and they really want to serve the county and the state and all that.
They're very serious.
But is there any that are, is there awards or anything if you get more?
No, there's not. I mean, we have dedicated traffic units that write quite a few traffic citations and give quite a few warnings every month. We have patrol officers that go out there and they may stop 25 to 75 cars in a month and give nothing but warnings because they don't like writing tickets. Okay, it's a contact. Like I said before, it's that interaction with the public. And of course, some of it depends on the neighborhoods and the areas in which you're doing traffic enforcement. And then we have others that do quite a few traffic stops and they make a lot of arrests for narcotics and or DWI.
Which leads me to my next question. Is there a list, like, I guess you'd stop somebody for a traffic violation, but there's also, and I know this is really important, I mean, from the standpoint that I do think that people that have warrants out, they may be a serious danger to society. Are y'all looking for them, or do they go to the houses? Or I know that they look at it when you're in the car after someone's been stopped, but how does that work?
Warrant, to see if there's a warrant
to
out
see if
for this
somebody has
person?
a warrant out, like somebody
Does
may
it just
have.
come up on your? I thought if you ran them, it would come up on.
Well, we have access to every warrant in Montgomery County. And, of course, if you run somebody's driver's license, then if they've got a warrant throughout the state of Texas, that will come up. And also through NCIC, if they have any warrants throughout any other state.
Okay.
But it depends whether or not the state wants to go however far to go get them. The thing is that we go, let's say you have a traffic warrant for an expired registration. Okay? I'm not going to come banging on your door at 3 in the morning because I've got nothing else to do, not wanting to get you for this traffic warrant.
Right.
But if you have a Class B misdemeanor warrant or above, good chances are, at some time or another, somebody's going to come knocking. Now, whether that be a theft by check, possession, if it's a felony, there's a good chance that we'll be coming with a lot of friends to knock on your door.
I know from personal experience, my clients, that they do come after them to their house for the more serious offenses. And I tell my guys, quit running from the law. Go turn yourself in. Just go do it. Get a bond, and we'll work through it, because that chasing and running away thing just doesn't work for anybody. That's like hiding. And
when they make the Montgomery County's 10 most wanted and there is a reward, their family members will turn them in for that few extra bucks.
Oh, I need to go look at that. I don't have any family members.
But no,
that's pretty bad. Their family members throw them under the bus.
They do quite a bit.
Gosh.
Really?
Okay.
Especially disgruntled
Exes,
partners.
Yes.
Exes.
Or ones that
Significant
have
others.
it over their head. Okay, my next question is, you mentioned NCIC. When did that come about? I know that now that we've had, in internet and all that, I honestly don't know, because we don't teach that in law school. That couldn't have been available 20 years ago, or was it?
Yes, it was.
Really?
It
Okay.
was. That system, NCIC and TCIC, has been available for quite a long time. NCIC is the federal side.
Okay.
Okay. That's where all felony warrants are entered into NCIC. TCIC is where all state warrants are entered into.
Okay.
That's for Texas.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. What if somebody had a traffic warrant in Washington State? Would that show up in
No.
it wouldn't? So that means that if we went on vacation in Washington, D.C., I won't mention any names, and there's a ticket that's been outstanding, for traffic violation for parking in the wrong place for years, what happens to that? I guess it never hits Texas.
No, it doesn't. We don't enforce other. It's a Class C misdemeanor. It's the
Okay.
lowest form of an
Right.
offense.
Okay.
Right.
If you have a Class C misdemeanor citation in Montgomery County, chances are in Walker County, Waller County, Harris County, they won't even look at
Oh,
that.
okay.
It's just Montgomery County that'll
Okay.
pick you up on the Class C.
Okay, got it.
But for example, if there was a felony in Washington State, would it pick that up
It would, but it would also depend whether or not the state of Washington wants you
to be
there.
aggressive? Okay.
Okay?
Really?
Yes, because we have some states that have some felonies that will only extradite within bordering states. So
Wow.
Washington State, if it has one that's in Texas or say in Florida,
Uh-huh.
they may not come get them. Now
Wow.
Texas, if it's a felony and you're anywhere in the United States, Texas will come get you.
I love Texas.
That's Texas for you. Okay, guys, we're going to take another break. We are here with Sargent Brice Herring of the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, and he is answering our questions, helping you in interaction with law enforcement. And we will be right back with Sargent Herring after the break.
Listen in Mondays at noon to hear Conroe news from local nonprofits, businesses, upcoming events, Conroe Park events, news stories, and information that matters to you with your host, Margie Taylor of Taylorized PR. For more information about being a guest, visit irlonestar.com/Conroe Culture.
Welcome back to the Legal Connection with Toni and Cheryl. We are here today talking with Sargent Brice Herring from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. And we've been talking about traffic stops and interaction with law enforcement. And now what were you telling us, Sargent Herring, over the break about the only times that you have to be given the opportunity to sign a
Or when the officer
citation?
requests that you sign a citation, tell us about that a little bit.
Under Texas law, on the Texas Traffic Code, there are two situations where you must be given the opportunity to sign a citation and give your promise to appear. And that's to the either local municipal court or JP court, whichever handles that. And that is for speeding in open container. Every other violation is an arrestable offense. Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean that the officer is going to arrest you if you failed to signal within the required distance of making a turn. 99.99% of all those result in a citation or
Right.
a warning. It just means that those are the only two violations that you must be given the opportunity to sign a promise to appear.
Okay. And like the failure to, I guess, signal when you turn, or that's a Class C though, correct?
It is. All those will be a Class C violation.
Okay. And so what you're saying, if I understand, is that if the officer requests that you sign the ticket, then no matter what the violation is, you should sign it because you're not admitting guilt. If you don't sign it, you could be arrested, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Signing the citation only means that you promise to contact the court. If you have an issue with the citation or you believe that the citation is unjust, then you have the opportunity to visit with a judge or have a jury hear it.
Right.
Okay? Like any other process, there is a process that it goes through. If you look up at the officer and says, no, I'm not signing it, and you say a few other things, chances are you're going to be given one opportunity to sign that citation, and then after that, again, you're going to be given a new roommate for the day.
And I will just add that from my own experience that I had a client who ultimately was found not guilty by jury, and he just had an attitude because he didn't want to be arrested because he didn't think he did anything wrong, and he was asked to sign a citation for a Class C offense. It was nothing, and he wouldn't sign, and he got hauled into jail for the day for not signing the ticket. And I learned that because they don't teach you that in law school. Again, it's one of those things that's kind of on the outskirts. You don't sign that ticket saying that you're going to appear and you're not admitting guilt, you could very easily be arrested, like immediately, because now you have aggravated the police officer and you had an attitude. And people just don't want to sign anything, and there's no reason not to sign that, even if it's just with an X or whatever
Right.
it may
It
be.
must be their signature.
Right.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? But what if they're illiterate? An X would do, right? Just,
Well, we don't run across.
they wouldn't have a driver's license if they were illiterate. That makes sense.
Well, if you can't read, there is ways of obtaining a driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've never in almost 30 years run across somebody that signed with an X that didn't know how to write at least their name.
Mm-hmm. Well, it
That
wouldn't have to
doesn't happen
necessarily be just driving. I guess if you went to their house, but would you get a ticket if you went to their house? That'd be a different situation.
It depends on the circumstances. It could be another different type of Class C violation other than a traffic violation, because you can receive citations for theft, things of that nature, and simple assault.
Right. That must, and that kind of leads to my next question. What is the most, I guess, the scariest situation you're called out on? Would it be assault, or would it be?
Is it domestic violence?
I mean, I don't know. When you get a call in, I guess from dispatch to go somewhere, what is the one that raises your blood pressure the most because may be a fear factor?
Well, the one that's the most dangerous, I think, is either the domestic violence or the situation where the call comes in that there's an individual with a firearm.
Mm-hmm.
Other than somebody that's doing maybe open carry, walking down the street, but somebody that is actively shooting at people or displaying a firearm in a manner that truly alarms people, those kind of circumstances really get things.
Is that when
get
you
the
get
blood
like
flowing.
help, or you call for additional?
Well, all the units will hear that, and when you
Okay.
get those kind of calls, a
Okay.
lot of people all respond.
And
to
that leads to my next question. So
Right.
all the units here, when there's a call from dispatch on who's going to go out to one or something. So
The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office has 6 patrol districts.
Mhm.
So in District 6, I work down in the Woodlands. We monitor our radio frequency. And when a serious call comes out, everybody can hear that. Plus, we have our mobile data computers in which it comes up on the call screen, and we can read the notes
okay.
for that also.
Now you said you had 6 districts. What are those districts? Are they geographical? Or?
They are. We have District 1, which is primarily Conroe area north, everything on
Toward Willis.
towards Willis, and everything on the east side of 45 in northeast.
Okay.
Then you have District 5, which the substation is in Walden.
Okay. Is
District
it more Lake Conroe?
Lake
Okay.
Conroe. Then you have District 4. I'm just kind of going around in a circle, which is Magnolia area.
Okay.
Then you have District 6, which is the Woodlands.
Mm-hmm.
Then going over, you have District 2, which is the area surrounding the Woodlands and up the I-45 corridor and the Rayford Sawdust area
Okay.
towards Harris County.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Spring.
You have, Spring. Then you have District 3, which is Porter, New Caney, that area over there.
Okay. Now I know isn't there only 5 JP courts?
Yes.
So the districts don't actually go to award whatever that court is. It's just different. They don't coordinate exactly, obviously, because
Correct.
okay.
Well, I feel like we need to, we only have you for a few more minutes for this show. We need to tie up, successful interaction with law enforcement and what that looks like to the law enforcement officer. So, we started with a scenario of you see someone who violates a traffic violation and you pull them over and you approach the vehicle. What does a successful interaction with you look like throughout that scenario?
When a traffic stop is conducted, a successful traffic stop is when I leave and the violator leaves, that they feel that there wasn't any negative interaction there. In other words, even if they received a citation, that they were treated fairly. Or if they got a warning, that they were treated fairly.
They're going to love that.
That the traffic stop
Yeah.
was just.
Now, you had mentioned something before we break or end for the segment. The 1 minute, how does that work on the little video?
The pre-event recording, anytime we turn on the switch to activate our overhead lights, our video system starts recording automatically. But it has pre-event recording. Actually, our cameras are always recording when they're on.
Okay.
So it goes back 1 full minute
Okay.
to catch any violation or anything else that happens.
Basically, what you
Oh,
saw
okay.
to make you turn on your camera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
People need that in their brains. That'd
Well,
be great.
well, I think that's wonderful that you want to have a good, positive interaction with the public. It's essential that the public trust their law enforcement officers and feel good about interacting with them.
Now, every police officer's had a bad interaction,
Right.
whether it was the violator's fault or the police officer's fault. And I
Right.
want you to understand, in 30 years, I've had some that were my fault,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that I got out with
You were
With an
upset or
attitude.
angry or something.
We're
'Cause they
human
did something
beings.
dumb.
We have
Yeah.
bad days. We
Mhm.
have the call that we just left, or whatever
Right.
the interaction may be. And then somebody does something that you walk up to them and you go, "Really? Are you serious? You just did that?" And you realize when it's all over with, that didn't go the way I wanted it to, and it wasn't a great interaction. We're human beings. We do make mistakes, and that's one of the things that we have to be better at, is coming up and saying, "You know what? That interaction wasn't the best. Could I have done better? Yes."
Oh, nice.
So
They teach you that in law enforcement school, or is that
no, they do. They
Okay.
do. You know, we're not perfect.
Right.
So
I wanted to discuss with you. I know you're going to be with us on our next show too, which is wonderful. And in the next show, we want to talk about concealed carry license and interaction with law enforcement when you have a concealed carry license, where you can take a gun and can't with a concealed carry.
a lot of gun discussion next show for sure?
A lot of gun discussion, but we've only got about 5 more minutes here, and I wanted to talk about the Sandra Bland Act and what that means. We touched on it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but it's a new state mandate regarding teens driving and vehicle operations and interactions with law enforcement. And Sergeant Herring, you and I were talking about that before we started the show. Can you tell us a little bit of a background of the Sandra Bland Act and what the education is supposed to accomplish?
well, everybody knows that because of the traffic stop and the interaction on the traffic stop with Sandra Bland and what happened days later while she was incarcerated, brought forth a lot of changes into law enforcement.
Well, first of all, what happened in that situation?
Well, she was arrested for a traffic violation. I don't know all the exact circumstances.
Right.
I do know that she was placed into custody and put into a jail where she later committed suicide.
Oh dear. Okay. All right.
And I watched that video a number of times because I was working in Waller County when that was going on.
And so there's a lot of changes that are coming about. The main thing, or one of the things that's coming about, is there's a change in this September. Actually, it was a bill that was passed in 2017, in September 2017, which gives a state mandate for law enforcement. Not only law enforcement, but Texas public high school curriculum, driver's ed classes, to give training to new and teenage drivers on a proper interaction with law enforcement. And this training also goes to law enforcement, by the way, to any new police officer and veteran officers. So every police officer in the state's got to go through similar mandated training.
That's great.
Okay.
Now the
And-
teenagers have to have training too. Is that
Oh yeah.
Really?
So that they all, and what it's all centered around is
That's in their driver's ed course? Is what you're
yes,
saying?
driver's ed or a high school
That should have been a
curriculum.
long time ago. They
No
had that.
kidding.
That's important.
But it's something my father taught me years ago.
Right.
Which is
We don't have that anymore.
But it goes in teaching the new drivers the role and duties of a police officer. Their individual rights, what they have a right to do and not to do during that police interaction, the proper behavior for both them and the police officer making a traffic stop. Okay? And the laws regarding what questions we can ask, detention by law enforcement, how to compliment an officer if he does the right thing, and how to file a complaint against an officer if you believe he's done the wrong thing.
Wow.
So all of these things are part of that act. And that's basically to help get this information out to the general public so that our interactions go smoother with the public.
Right.
One thing that the public forgets sometimes is that police officers are part of them.
Well,
They're
one thing
part
the
of the
public
neighborhood.
forgets
Right.
while they're getting a ticket is,
Right.
but for the police officer, we would be a country that was lawless. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, if it
Yeah.
weren't for that service, I don't know what we would do.
The other
But they're
thing,
citizens just like every other citizen.
and the officers also need to remember that they are a part of the public.
Right.
Okay, and they need to remember that, yes, we need to treat them the way we want to be treated. Okay, which sometimes happens, sometimes it doesn't. Like I said, we make mistakes like everybody else. I'll be the first one to stand up. We've made some good ones in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah, but you've also done some amazingly heroic things also on the more important side to help people.
You know, all these guys and girls that go out there every day and put on a uniform and do absolutely amazing things, do it
Right.
because they love the public. They don't do it for any other reason other than they care.
Well, I see that
Right.
side of it, and I'm overwhelmed by the people that will put their life on the lines under the smallest little circumstances sometimes that get out of control. So we really need that.
Absolutely. And we certainly are indebted and appreciative. Well, Sergeant Herring, thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to our show next week where you will also be our guest. And guys, if there's something that you want to ask us, send us your questions at legalconnectionshow.com. You can catch us here Tuesdays, 12 to 1 p.m., 104.5 or 106.1 Conroe's FM. And
Serve God by serving others.
that's right. See you next week.